Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and 9.20 is here, the new update for World of Tanks, and it brings with it a brand new auto-loading French tank destroyer in the form of the AMX 50 Foch B. And one of my favourite things to do when release day comes, and also for the following days afterwards, is to check out how you guys, my Epic community, and also the World of Tanks community in general, have been doing in the brand new vehicles. And today, Buckshot is going to be showing you exactly how this vehicle performs. Now, I saw loads of great replays of this tank, but Buckshot's was just absolutely fantastic. And if you've been sleeping under a rock for whatever reason and have no idea about this vehicle, well, this pretty much sums it up. Buckshot misses one, he hits a second, and he knows he's got so many shots in his magazine with this 120mm that he can afford to fire one into the building to get to the other side and eradicate one of the tier 8 light tanks right at the start of this game. In fact, Buckshot was kind of unlucky with his rolls there, 416, 315, 365 and 4. Now, if he had rolled even average or way below average on two of those last three shots, he would have taken out the HWK-12 and had an extra round to dispense, I guess, into whatever tank that he wanted. Now, this vehicle, a lot of people are going to be calling this the AMX 50, the AMX 50 Foch WTF 100. I don't know. We'll have to think of an interesting way to combine the names. But really, it's kind of like a WTF 100 version 2. The delay between the shells is the same. 2 seconds delay between the shells, which means that this vehicle is capable of doing 2,400 damage within 10 seconds of the first shot. Now, one thing that is really scary about this tank as well is the reload of the tank. How long it takes the vehicle to reload an entire magazine. We are talking about 38 seconds here. That's way shorter than it was for the old WTF 100, which was deemed to be so good, or should we say damaging, for the game that it was removed back in May 2015 in update 9.15. Well, that's over a couple of years ago now since we've seen the WTF 100. I'm sure that a lot of you out there might not know what I'm talking about, and so I thoroughly recommend you check out a video on this channel called Why the WTF 100 was removed. It will pretty much let you know the whole backstory there. But the 30-second version is there used to be a tank which had a crazy autoloader like this that had a turret, and it was just game breaking, and so they removed it from the game, even though they tried to fix it multiple times by reducing its statistics. And that's why this vehicle is going to be a little bit controversial, I think. Sure, the old WTF 100, when it first went into the game in November 2013, had a 6-round Jagdtiger 560 alpha damage autoloader, which was capable of doing 3,360 damage within, I guess, 10 seconds of the first shot, a lot like this one. Now, this magazine is much less, right? But I should also highlight that before Wargaming finally removed the WTF 100 from the game, they decided to just remove an entire round from its magazine. So even the 5-round magazine version of the WTF 100 that was still capable of doing 2,800 damage within 8 seconds was deemed too powerful, and thus it was removed. But one thing that's interesting is the nerfed version of the WTF 100, which had a 58-second magazine reload for its 2,400 alpha damage. Before I continue that line of thought, yeah, just look at this. What is this tier 8 heavy going to do? One miss after the first shot. Next one, he's trying to take his tracks off. There we go, and kablam. Even though there was one miss there, Buckshot manages to finish him off. And he still had a round extra left over to put into the oh-ho. How absolutely mental this tank is. He's up to 4,900 damage in the first 4 minutes of the game. But as I was saying, the nerfed version of the WTF 100, which it was nerfed in update 9.2 in August 2014, I've got my notes here alongside me. Now, that was capable of doing the 2,800 damage in the magazine, but it still had 2,896 DPM. One thing that's very interesting is that the Foch B actually has higher DPM than the nerfed version of the WTF 100. Ironically, or shall we say coincidentally, it has the same DPM as that SU-122-54, which is 3,000 on the dot. That is absolutely monstrous DPM. This is one of the top 10 DPM tanks in the game we are talking about now. And it has an autoloader to go with it, which just makes it incredibly dangerous to deal with. And if you stop for any amount of time really in front of the tank, you are certainly going to regret it. Now, there are, I guess, some balancing factors for this tank. Firstly, the accuracy is 0.34, and that's not nearly as good as what it used to be on the WTF V100. The old WTF V100 used to have 0.29 accuracy, and also the aim time on this tank is 2.3 seconds. So you might be seeing that Buckshot isn't quite able to really fully aim the shots. But we also need to take into account he's not using coffee and croissants, or is it just coffee, the French consumable? Wait a minute, no, it's cinnamon buns for the Swedes, right? So yeah, I think it is croissants and coffee for the French tanks. And if he was using that, and maybe he's missing a few crew skills, although I do doubt that, then he could get his aim time down a little bit more. But it's 2.3 seconds, and that's not nearly as good as it was on the WTF V100 when it was 1.5 seconds. And also we've got to factor in the penetration on this tank. It's one of the downsides. We're talking about 257 millimeters of pen. The penetration on the old WTF V100, we're talking about 276. But this really coming up here is the tank in a nutshell. 461. What was that? 406. 399. He gets bored of trying to shoot the tier 9 German heavy, so he turns to the tier 8. 416. Puts another one in for 396, and then he's got another round to finish off the VK as well. That was pretty much 2,400 damage, give or take, in 10 seconds of the first shot. That is absolutely dominating. Now, of course, the aim time's a little high. The accuracy, well, it's not perfect, but it's still pretty good. Is the mobility on this tank bad? No, I'd say this tank is actually faster than the old WTF V100 used to be. What about the armor? Well, everybody knows the weakness of the old WTF V100 was the fact that the turret on the tank was absolutely god-awful and horrific, and high explosive rounds could penetrate it. And also, you could argue that the WTF V100 was balanced heavily because of how strong artillery was back in the day. Now, the natural counter of the Foch, again, is going to be artillery, but so few people are now playing artillery and their penetration is so low, I'm just not sure if the Foch B is really going to have that much competition like the WTF V100 did with regards to high explosive rounds. Furthermore, back then, loads more people were playing the FV215B183 with its unnerved Hess shells, or at least I believe the Hess shells were still unnerved. Or should we just say that more people were playing that tank back then than they are now? And that again was a big counter for the WTF V100. Now, it's not really going to be a gigantic counter for the Foch B. Sure, if you can hit the weak points on top of the vehicle here and here, but good luck trying to hit that with such a derpy gun. Or if you manage to get the side and penetrate it. But they've buffed the side armor of this tank now up to 80 millimeters. And so that means that it's getting quite hard to be able to penetrate the side of this tank, even when you do get some funky angles down the side. And so all this is starting to lead me to believe that, well, this maybe isn't going to be... I think it's too early to say that this is the new WTF V100, at least to being the extent of it, with the extent of it being broken. But I clearly think that you can be calling this kind of a WTF V100 version 2, and it's going to be very interesting in the next few weeks to see if games like this are a coincidence, or whether the vehicle is going to be absolutely dominant and it's going to have a crazy win ratio, crazy damage. We're going to have to all see how it's going to pan out. And I will be playing this tank quite a bit on stream tonight, amongst all of the other vehicles which have been changed. So do come along and have a gander if you want to see my first impressions of playing this vehicle on the random queue. So Buckshot, up to 6 kills now, with finishing off that T30. Only 8 damage. I thought it was 80 for a second. Only 8 damage dealt to that tier 9 turreted American tank destroyer. And now all that's left to do is to waltz his way in, and he's not even going to bother to reload. I think he probably could sneak a reload out right now to have that full magazine for the final competition on the enemy team in the form of those 3 vehicles. But when he's on 9,700 damage, I guess he just probably wants to penetrate one more. Well, he's going to go for the reload now anyway, right? One thing I should also mention, just thinking about how this vehicle stacks up compared to the old WTF V100, remember that the old WTF V100 had a fully traversable turret, right? And also that tank, I believe, had 420 meters view range? Or was that in it in its unnerved state? I can't quite remember what the view range was on the WTF V100 in its final form. But for the Foch B, it's 380, and that's not bad. You're probably going to be using coated optics on this tank instead of binoculars if you do have an exceptionally skilled crew with things like situational awareness, or if you do have recon, or if you're using coffee, brothers in arms, that kind of all that good stuff. But it looks like Buck Shot has a really good crew here because he's still managing to get up to that 445 meters view range, and he's probably using coated optics as he's clearly not using binoculars. But anyway, with the final few seconds of that round, he picks up another 2 kills, putting his damage total up to nearly 10,500 that we saw, and securing a Radley Walters medal, destroying over half of the enemy team. And so there you have it. Buckshot nails his ace tanker on release day for the new auto-loading top-tier French tank destroyer. He also gets a Radley Walters medal for his 8 kills, a high caliber, unsurprisingly, for dealing 10,481 damage. And as Buckshot didn't resort to firing APCR rounds that I've seen a lot of Foch B drivers doing to compensate for the poor penetration with the armor-piercing rounds, he still makes a fairly decent profit for tier 10. So the AMX 50 Foch B, is it completely overpowered? Well, I still think it's too early to make a bold statement like that, although I am beginning to think that this vehicle might be tuned a little bit too high. I just think the DPM of this vehicle, the fact that it's higher than the WTF 100 at 3,000 damage per minute, just leaves too short of a period where this vehicle is vulnerable after it's finished unloading. And that scary DPM, unlike the AMX 50 Foch 155, just allowed Buckshot to go on a rampage multiple times through this video, making new magazines against targets that he otherwise couldn't have engaged, and maybe they would have flanked him if they were playing in the AMX 50 Foch 155. To all intents and purposes, this vehicle is pretty much like the Waffenträger Alpha E100. It just sacrifices a turret to be able to gain increased frontal hull armor, while also foregoing a larger magazine, better aim time and accuracy to be able to reload faster and have better DPM overall. Nevertheless, Buckshot, congratulations to you on this monster replay, and thank you so much for uploading it onto the What Replays website and also putting my name in the title to be able to get my attention and to show that you're a fan, I guess. And hopefully all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it, and let me know in the comments what you think about the Foch B. Do you think this is the WTF 100 version 2, or do you think that there's enough differences between the tanks to mean that this thing might stand a chance of being more balanced? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.